Welcome to Soul Storytime. Today we're going to be reading a book called Grandmother's Dreamcatcher. This book is written by Becky Ray McCain and illustrated by Stacey Schuett. I look forward to reading this book with you all today. Now let's get ready for story time. Grandmother's Dreamcatcher. The Jeep grumbles and growls along the road. The top is rolled down and the wind lifts the corner of my bandana. Daddy and Mama are taking me to Grandmother's cabin way out in the woods by a lake. I will stay with her while Daddy and Mama find a home near Daddy's new job in Chicago. When Daddy turns, the road becomes skinny like a snake. I lean back and close my eyes. I picture Grandmother in her blue cotton dress with the little flowers I can only see when I am close enough for a hug. Grandmother is Chippewa like us. She is tiny and brown, with dark, shiny eyes that wrinkle in the corners when she smiles. She is almost light enough for me to lift in the air. That is what I will do someday when I'm a bigger girl. I will lift my grandmother into the sky. She will flutter and fly and sound like a bird when she laughs as we float above the trees. Look at them floating above the trees. The jeep stops. It is night outside. Grandmother opens my door before I do, and I tumble toward her half asleep. I lean against her as we walk to the cabin. The chilly night wind races through the trees and around me. Look at there's grandmother holding her. In the copper pot on grandmother's wood stove, water makes giggle sounds as it bubbles and boils. Heat pours from the stove, and soon my hands and face feel nice and warm. The grown-ups start talking. I snuggle down on grandmother's green couch and drift to sleep again. There's the teapot. This time, sleep is noisy and mean. Scary things that howl, whistle, and hoot like the night wind are so close. I scream and reach for Mama and Daddy, but in my dream, they can't hear me. Kimmy, Mama says as she holds me, wake up. You're safe. With Mama's arms around me, I am not afraid anymore. I feel her carry me to the bed in grandmother's sewing room. She carried her to the bed in the sewing room. In the morning, sunshine is scattered over my bed and grandmother's floor. The grown-ups are talking in the kitchen. Mama's voice sounds different. I think maybe she is telling about my bad dreams. I walk into the room and see grandmother holding a small circle made of wood. Inside it is a web of leather string. Feathers are on top of the circle. Some hang down on a string with silver beads. Good morning, I say. What's that? A dream catcher, grandmother says. What does it do? I ask. Grandmother laughs. You'll find out. There it is, the dream catcher. The dream catcher's beads shimmer in the sunshine while I eat breakfast. When I see Daddy with a suitcase, I feel sad deep inside. Mama gets her coat and I run to her. We'll only be gone a week, Mama says as they hug me goodbye. I give them my tightest hugs. A week is too long. Grandmother stands beside me. We watch the car grow smaller as they drive down the road. It's like another terrible dream just happened. I feel lost and alone. Come on, child, grandmother says. We have a dream catcher to make just for you. They're watching her parents drive away, but she's with her grandmother. In the woods by the lake, grandmother and I find a green twig that bends. I find some black and white feathers. Back inside the cabin, grandmother brings beads, leather string, and thin leather strips. She makes a circle out of the twig and ties the ends together with a piece of leather. I choose 3 silver beads and string them. Then I tie one feather to the string. Grandmother loops a long piece of leather string around and around inside the circle to make the web. As she works, she tells me a story. Before you and I had grandmothers, a Chippewa girl had scary dreams, she says. She would toss and turn and wake herself up with her own screams. I do that, I say. So her grandmother did what our people still do. She asked the Great Spirit for help, and she was given a vision of a dream catcher circle. It had feathers on it, just like yours and mine, but the inside was empty. When this grandmother hung the dream catcher above her grandchild's head, a spider came down and made the web inside. All the child's dreams were then caught in that web to go to the Great Spirit. Only the sweet dreams were permitted to go back to the girl. Did it work? I asked. Of course, said grandmother. After we finish the dream catcher, we hang it above my pillow. That night, I shiver when I think of Mama and Daddy so far away. Grandmother finds me. She sweeps back my hair as she rocks me. I am warm again. Somehow I am in bed. I only remember my dream catcher floating above my head and grandmother's hands as she tucks my blankets around me. She's about to go to sleep now. When I awake, I see my dream catcher turn in the morning light. Grandmother peeks in the room. I'm happy, grandmother, I tell her. My bad dreams didn't come last night. Grandmother's whole face crinkles around her smile. She didn't have any bad dreams. We go to the kitchen. Mama and Daddy will like my dream catcher, I say as grandmother cooks crispy fry bread. I think so, says grandmother. In your new house, the dream catcher will be in your room. I miss them very much, I tell her. Grandmother hugs me close. Kimmy, Mama and Daddy will come for you, she says in her quiet voice. Then you and I will surprise them. How will we do that? I ask. We will make presents for your new home, answers grandmother. I wonder what they're going to make. What do you think? Each night I sleep under my dream catcher. My dreams are happy and peaceful. Each day, grandmother and I are busy with our work. We sew beads on leather to make hair ties for Mama. Grandmother takes me fishing, and I find a special feather just for Daddy. We make a dream catcher for Mama and Daddy. But my favorite surprise is a picture I make of my family. That's grandmother, Daddy, Mama, and me under my dream catcher. Rainbow colors splash out of the feather. And when Mama and Daddy come back, that's the present they like best. The end. And this is the instructions on how to make your own dream catcher. Thank you so much for reading Grandmother's Dreamcatcher with me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can know when I'm going to read my next story. Have a great day. Thank Welcome to Solo Story Time. Today we're going to be reading a book called I Hope. This book is written by Monique Gray Smith, who is Cree, Lakota, and Scottish ancestry, and illustrated by Gabriel Grimard. I look forward to reading this book with you all today. Now let's get ready for story time. I hope. I hope that you and those that you love know joy. I hope that you are kind. I hope you have belly laughs. I definitely have belly laughs. Do you? I hope you love to learn. I hope that when sad tears leave your eyes, someone is there to catch them. I hope you are helpful. Have you helped someone lately? I hope you know beautiful happiness. Look, they're sticking their tongues out and getting snowflakes. I hope you play outside. I hope you are a caretaker of Mother Earth, planting trees, recycling, and picking up trash. I hope that when you need a hug, there are loving arms to hold you. I hope that you and those you love have healthy food, clean water, and a safe place to sleep. I hope you are courageous. Every child matters. We are one. equal, every child matters. I hope you remember to smile that beautiful smile of yours. I hope you are respectful. I hope you always remember that you are special and you matter. I have lots of hopes for you and for me, but I wonder, what are your hopes? Hmm. Thank you so much for reading I Hope with me today. This is definitely an enjoyable book, so don't forget to like and subscribe so I can read more books for you. Have a beautiful day. Welcome to Solo Storytime. Today we're going to be reading a book called The Eye of the Needle. This book is illustrated and retold by Terry Sloat, based on a Yupik tale as told by Betty Huffman. I look forward to reading this fun book with you all today. Now let's get ready for story time. The Eye of the Needle. Long ago, on the shore of the cold sea, little Almec lived with his grandmother in a tiny sod hut. It was a time between the dark of winter and the warmth of summer, and there was little left to eat. Almec and his grandmother waited for the sun to melt the ice and for the spring breeze to send it from the shore. Then they could gather food from the sea once again. Grandmother sat inside the hut, sewing with a beautiful ivory needle. Her eyes were old, but the wide open eye of her needle helped her see many things. One day, when grandmother knew the ice was ready to leave, she spoke. Little Almec, I have been watching you grow. This spring, you are big enough to go out and hunt our food for us. The next morning, Almec dressed quickly in his newly mended spring parka and hurried to the shore. In a stream trickling past his feet, something flickered across the pebbles. Almec scooped up a tiny needlefish. I am so hungry, he said. I will eat this and catch something bigger for grandmother. And with that, he popped the spiny needlefish into his mouth. Gloomp! Down went the needlefish. A moment later, Almec said, I am still hungry. As Almec followed the shore, a squirmy hooligan fish flopped at his feet. He reached into the water and grabbed its slippery sides. I am so hungry, he said. I will eat this and catch something bigger for grandmother. And with that, glump, down slipped the hooligan. But a moment later, Almec said, I am still hungry. A few steps ahead, noisy seagulls swooped over salmon and a little river. Almec scattered the birds with a handful of pebbles. Catching a salmon by the tail, he licked his lips and said, I am so hungry. I will eat this and catch something bigger for grandmother. And with that, Almec opened his mouth wide and glump, down slid the salmon. But only a moment later, he said, I am still hungry. Almec hurried along the beach, eating more and more, but growing hungrier and hungrier. Soon he came upon a fast seal resting on the sand. Almec thought, how his grandmother loved seal, but he said, I am so hungry. I will eat this and catch something bigger for grandmother. And with that, he lifted the seal, stretched his mouth open wide, and glump, down flipped the seal. But within a moment, Almec said, I am still hungry. And on down the beach he went in search of more food. Not far ahead, a lazy walrus slept on the rocks, basking in the warm sun. Almec crept up close. While the walrus slept, Almec grasped him by his long ivory tusks. Grandmother would be proud of this catch, he said, but I am so hungry. I will wait to get something even bigger for grandmother. And with that, he lifted the walrus from the rocks, opened his mouth wider than ever, and glump, down wriggled the walrus. After he jiggled the walrus into a comfortable spot, Almec said, I am still hungry. Out on the water, Almec saw the prize of the sea, a great whale. Here was a creature with enough meat to feed an entire village for a whole winter. To Almec, the whale looked very tasty indeed. Almec watched the whale glide in on the crest of a wave. I am so hungry, he said, without one thought of his grandmother, and with that, he bent down low and opened his mouth to an enormous size. When the wave rolled in to crash on the sand, glump, down rushed the whale. After a moment, Almec said, I am not hungry. He ate a whale. But I am very thirsty. Stopping at the nearest stream, he slurped swallow after swallow until the stream was dry. Then Almec took a long, long rest. When he awoke, Almec remembered he had saved nothing for his grandmother. Too tired and much too full to hunt, Almec plodded slowly back to the hut, wondering what to tell grandmother. When grandmother heard Almec outside, she called, Come in with your catch, Almec. I am so hungry. Almec was very uncomfortable. But grandmother, my catch is much too big to bring through the door. Grandmother was sewing with her ivory needle. You must have returned with many things for us, Almec. Climb to the top of the hut and come in through the smoke hole. Almec knew the smoke hole was much smaller even than the doorway, but he always did what his grandmother told him, so he pulled himself to the top of the hut before he asked, How am I to squeeze through such a small hole? Now you can come in through the eye of my needle, she replied. Almec groaned. Grandmother, the eye of your needle is many times smaller than the smoke hole. But as soon as grandmother held the needle up to the smoke hole, Almec was magically drawn into the hut. And he slid through the needle into the hut. There was a loud pop. Then a rush of water swirled him around and around. Out came the needlefish past grandmother's nose. Swish! Out slipped the hooligan fish. Swoosh! Out slid the salmon. Splash! Out flipped the seal. Whoosh! Out wriggled the walrus. And they all flowed out of the hut. Then, with a great rumble, out on a wave rolled the whale. Out of the whale came shrimp, seaweed, crabs, fish eggs, and even a whaling ship in full sail. When everything came to rest, grandmother said, Almec, what a wonderful provider you are. Grandmother enjoyed a fine feast. Then she proudly shared their catch with all who came to see them. Almec did not eat. He was no longer hungry. The end. Thank you so much for reading The Eye of the Needle with me. I love that story. I hope you did too. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you know when I'm going to read my next story. Have a beautiful day. Welcome to Soul Story Time. Today we're going to be reading a book called This Is How I Know. This book is written by author Brittany Luby, who is of Anishinaabe descent. Illustrated by Joshua Mangishik Pewis Deckley, who is Ojibwe. and translated by Alvin Ted Corbiere and Alan Corbiere, who are father and son and are Anishinaabe. I look forward to reading this book with you all today. Now let's get ready for story time. This is how I know. This is how I know a book about seasons. This is a bilingual book in Anishinaabe and English. How do I know summer is here? When Loon opens her red eyes to call across the water, and green Luna moth hides among birch leaves. When yellow bumblebee collects purple fireweed with me, and we spy brown screech owl asleep in the tree. When blueberries drop readily, and the sand is hot enough to sting. When insects billow black from the trees and the sun slips into an orange dream. This is how I know summer. How do I know fall is here? When brown cattails swell and bend, and red-winged blackbird takes his leave. When mallard feasts on yellow corn, and black bear licks the ant pile clean. When orange mushrooms emerge one by one, and we collect them from the forest green. When white clouds form in fewer numbers, and the sky seems bluer than it was before. This is how I know fall. How do I know winter is here? When I wait for the sun's bright light and watch brown deer strip cedar. When I whistle to blue jay, two wheedle, and lay seeds for red-capped woodpecker. When orange fox begs at my door, and gray mouse sneaks inside for warmth. When the white moon sits highest in the sky, and green light dances through the night. This is how I know winter. How do I know spring is here? When black ice softens and green shoots peek through white snow. When yellow-billed seagull comes home to roost and keeps her spotted eggs warm in the nest. When red-breasted robin lays her blue eggs and pink-bellied puppies tumble and suckle. When an orange star shows bedtime is near and brown peeper sings, "Good night, little one." This is how I know spring. That is all of the seasons. Thank you so much for reading this beautiful book with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you know when I'm going to read my next story. Have a beautiful day. Welcome to Saltwa Storytime. Today we're going to be reading a book called Wisdom Weaver. This book is written by Jan A. Johnson and illustrated by Linda Taylor. This book is also translated by Lorraine Begay Manavi, who is Diné of the Navajo Nation. I look forward to reading this book with you all today. Now let's get ready for story time. Wisdom Weaver. The Navajo land has a beauty of its own. There are many flocks of sheep and corrals near hogans grazing on the open land. That is a hogan. The local trading post has many traditional Navajo rugs on display, on tables hanging from walls. Aren't those rugs beautiful? Grandma welcomes me to her hogan. Yat grandchild. I greet her. Yat grandmother. Grandmother's hogan is comfortable. One large room with a wood stove in the center, a bed, a sink and refrigerator, a table and chairs, and a weaver's loom. That's the loom. She shows me her many sheep. The sheep are in a corral near the hogan. Sheep have wool needed for weaving rugs. Grandmother says it takes patience and a passion for the long process of creating a traditional Navajo rug. We begin. Shear the sheep, clean and wash the wool, dry the wool outside on the fence. Grandmother says good thoughts and words bring the right actions. We card the wool, taking out lumps, straightening fibers, brushing back and forth, minutes to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, until there is a big pile of fluffy wool strands. Grandmother says our spinning of the wool is very important. It will become the quality and the signature of our rug. Between the hand and the knee, using the long wooden spindle, we spin the strands of wool, minutes to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, until the wool becomes a fine, even yarn. We loop the yarn into skeins. Then we wash the yarn with yucca root and hang it outside to dry. Grandmother steps lightly upon the earth. We carefully gather plants from many areas to color the wool into natural tones. Outside, the plants boil in separate pots for each colored dye. Each skein of yarn is placed into a pot to soak, sometimes for a few days, for just the right shade. The skeins are dried and rolled into separate balls. The loom is taken outside, placed on a blanket, and set up for weaving. Grandmother teaches me to say the beauty all around us. She says a traditional weaving contains the culture of the Navajo and the beauty of the land. We sit down with our colors of finely spun wool, one weave at a time, one row at a time, back and forth, minutes to hours, hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months. Grandmother says her vision, thoughts, and designs create each weave. Each weave, little by little, comes closer to finishing a traditional Navajo rug. She says, with my patience, good thoughts, and right actions, I can design my own rug, myself, and my life. It's beautiful. Grandmother has a beauty and a wisdom of her own. The end. Thank you so much for reading Wisdom Weaver with me today. I look forward to reading more stories for you, so don't forget to like and subscribe so you know when I'm going to read my next story. Have a wonderful day.